try, and that's a good.
Can you hear me now?
There's another.
Okay. Can you hear me now, Antonella? Well, I hope so. Anyway, we should start, Robbie, right? Is everyone?
I know there are also other friends trying to connect, and I don't know if they made it. But the other issue is at the moment that I can't hear you. Let's see what happens.
Well,
now I can hear you.
Okay, well, maybe.
Fantastic.
Well, good morning and good afternoon.
Morning.
We have already.
Wherever you are.
Okay, thank you. I suppose we have most of the participants already in. Robbie, can you confirm, please? Okay. Okay, so okay, I suppose we are most here. Most of us, we have already 19 participants plus the speakers, so 20 now, but they're still coming. So we'll just wait one more minute to allow everyone to come in. Okay. We're still we're still welcoming everyone in the room. Okay. Well, I suppose we can start now. So once again, good morning or good afternoon. Well, it depends on the time of day that you're, if your time zone, of the place where you're following us. I'm António Teixeira. I'm a professor at the Open University of Portugal, and I'm also a senior Eden Senior Fellow. And it's really a pleasure and an honor to welcome you to this session. Actually, it's the last session of the Eden Open Education Week 2022, and so it's a kind of a special one. It's a celebration of the Open Education Week. It's a celebration of Eden and the Eden community. It's a celebration also of Europe, and it's a celebration of our common heritage. So in a sense, we have a lot to celebrate today. As you know, throughout the week, the Open Education Week had been focusing the discussions on several aspects of what is open education and what is the practice of open learning and open education. This one of the most important aspects involved in open education is the flexibility, apart from the openness, of course. One of the main contributions it has, open education has achieved in the last decades, has been to increase the connection, the interconnection between formal, non-formal, and informal learning. And in this sense, the interconnection between formal education, especially in higher education, but also in other levels of the education systems, with non-formal education, and museum education is one of them, has been increased, and this has been in a way promoted and fostered by open education. And how museum education has been embracing open education in the last years, and in particular in the context of it has been accelerated in the context of the pandemic. Well, but before we open the discussion, let me just say also another word related to the standing of Europe, of Eden in this special historical moment in Europe. As you know, we are living, well, we're just living one difficult period because of COVID-19. and now it seems we're entering another difficult period because of the war in Europe. Eden stands for a set of values. It was founded on a number of values that relate to the European common heritage, values that relate with openness, with freedom, with inclusion, with dialogue, and with cooperation. In that sense, Eden was, as it's founded in 1991, exactly in a historical moment in Europe where everything was possible, and we thought that a new age of cooperation, collaboration has started in Europe. Eden was, well, one of the examples and one of the expressions of that feeling and that movement in Europe. And so Eden stands with those values, keeps standing with those values, and in this particular moment, we celebrate them because they're probably more needed than ever. And this relates also with museums and museum education. Museums are also an important institution in our way of life, in our way of, in our civilization, let's say it, because they're also a place where we celebrate, preserve, and develop our common heritage. And so it's in the combination, in the crossing of those two important aspects, of course, the set of values that make us Europeans, and also what represents the contribution of open education and of museum education, that we've set the discussion for today. And the webinar, as it was announced, has this main topic for discussion: how open education is contributing and will continue to contribute to the digital transformation of the museum learning experience, exactly in that sense of helping promote the widen participation opportunities, having promote inclusion, having promote democracy and freedom in that sense, and well-being in that sense as well. To speak about these topics, we have a wonderful panel of experts and friends as well, which I'll start introducing just now. First of all, we'll have Dr. Antonella Porce. Well, she's a full professor at the University of Modena, Reggio Emilia in Italy. She's a Eden Senior Fellow, as you know, and she currently holds the role of a full professor in experimental pedagogy at the University of Modena and Reggio Emilia. And she's also directing Intellect, which is the Center for Research into Museum Education, Wellbeing and Teaching Technology. She's also the head of the postgraduate courses Heritage Education Digital Technologies and Museum Education General Aspects, plus the postgraduate course Advanced Studies in Museum Education. Well, she coordinates national units within European project frameworks, and she has been chairing international academic communities dealing with distance learning as well. Welcome, Antonella. It's a pleasure having you here. We have also...
It's a pleasure for me.
We have also Dr. Covadonga Rodrigo San Juan. Well, she's there. She's also a full professor at the National University for Distance Education in Spain, UNED, as it's most commonly known, which is based in Madrid. She has a PhD in telecommunications engineering from the Polytechnical University of Madrid, and she's currently Deputy Director of Research, Transfer and Innovation at the School of Informatics at UNED. She has a very long curriculum you can access in the web page, but let me just point out that she has held various academic positions, namely being Pro Vice Chancellor of Technology, Deputy Vice Director of Applied Technology and Study Centers, and Director of the Research Chair of Digital Inclusions. This is a very important feature of her curriculum, and she has done a wonderful job running this chair. This chair is funded by the Vodafone Spain Foundation. Her research focused on accessibility, interoperability, and recommendation aspects in autonomous access to educational resources, repositories, e-learning platforms, audiovisual platforms, and mobile applications. She's also a member of ANOR in quality standards in e-learning. She has a lot of expertise in quality assurance, and not just expertise, also a lot of practice in conducting research and evaluation. And namely, one of the projects she has been more connected with is the e-excellence seal and open labeling for MOOCs that is in the framework of EADTU, also our other European association related to this topic. She's an Eden Fellow and a member of the IE Education Chapter and the GoGN network on open educational resources. Covadonga. Let me also introduce you Antonia Liguri. She's a senior lecturer at Loughborough University in the UK. And this is also another form of inclusion. The UK is still part of Europe. There's no doubt about it. And Eden is a proof of that. Antonia is a senior lecturer in applied storytelling at the Loughborough University. Her academic background is in history and computer science, in this combination. And since 2008, she has been involved in a variety of international research projects aiming at developing tools and methods to foster innovation in education, mostly exploring the role of storytelling in today's digital world, investigating and trial ways of using digital storytelling as a participatory methodology for interdisciplinary research. She has been, in the past 7 years, her research has been focusing on 3 main strands: applied storytelling on environmental issues, digital storytelling in cultural or heritage education, storytelling and urban design. More recently, she has joined HEART, which is Healing, Education and Innovation Research Therapy, and she has been exploring digital storytelling as a therapeutic intervention as well. Well, before moving to the UK, she's Italian by birth, and she was the coordinator of the multimedia department at the BICR Sistema Cultura in Italy, a consortium of 5 cultural institutions with the aim of contributing to the enhancement of historical and cultural heritage through the use of innovative methodologies. Finally, last but not least, we have Ángeles Sanchez. She's a senior lecturer at the National Distance Education University in Spain as well, UNED, and she's the chair, the director of the chair in distance education at UNED. Ángeles, besides being also a very good friend, she's a great expert in open and distance education. She has a PhD in psychology. And but she lectures, and because of that, she lectures at the Faculty of Psychology at UNED. Apart from the chair, which was already mentioned, she has a long expertise in methodological innovation in open distance education, and she has served in many positions at her university. As such, she has been the director of the Institute for Distance Education at UNED. Also, the deputy director for academic staff training at UNED as well. She was also the director of the Ibero-American course for distance education, and she's a specialist, an expert in OER, having also coordinated the first Latin American MOOC called Ibero-Virtual UNED, Basic Digital Competencies. She has also collaborated in development, production, design and development of many other MOOC courses, excuse me, and she's a member of the UNED Group of Innovation Smart, CG, Smart and Adaptive Learning and Teaching Crowding Group. And she has coordinated a number of also other innovation projects at UNED and in the framework of European projects as well. She is the chair of the student support field of expertise of the Empower project at EADTU, and a member of the team of reviewers of ED2 as well, for the e-excellence project and label. Well, welcome Angeles as well. And now, starting the discussion, we'll first have a look on three particular projects which are significant in crossing these fields of open education, promoting inclusion and accessibility, and also the development of museum education. And I'll start by giving the floor to Antonella for a short presentation on the Inclusive Memory project, that
Yes.
European funded project that has just started this year. Antonella, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Antonio. Thanks to Eden. You know how dear Eden is to me, so I'm so glad to be here with you, as you said, with this large community of friends. And the panel as well is made of very, very dear friends. So it's really nice to be with all of you, especially as you were saying in this moment of fear and really difficult time we have been living. Anyway, I don't want to steal too much time, but just to introduce briefly the project. I'll try to be very, very brief. So, as you said, the project is called the Inclusive Memory. Actually, we focus on a specific perspective, that is that of the use of museums for well-being and health through the creation of a new shared memory. The partnership is made and composed.
Antonella, sorry for
Yeah?
interrupting. Can you put the full
okay,
screen? Yeah.
I see the full screen. So let's start again.
Thank you.
See what happens. Okay, so the inclusive
Perfect.
memory and the title that I just read. So the focus is on well-being and health through the use of museums, of museum objects in particular. As you can see here, the partnership is made by the University of Modena and Reggio Emilia, which I represent, Zetema Progetto Cultura, which is a company working with museums in the Rome area in particular. So these are the two Italian partners. Universidad Nacional de Educación a Distancia, UNED, and we have two main representatives here participating also in the project. Universidade Aberta from Lisbon, and of course Antonio knows it very well and is part of the partnership as well. Ascoli Islands University in Iceland, which can boast an interesting track record and an interesting experience in the use of museums to fight health problems, especially in elderly people. Inter alia, that is a non-profit organization in Greece, in Athens in particular, and their work through heritage, of course, is addressed to promote inclusion, especially for migrants and people, asylum seekers, actually. And then the Institut Català de la Salut, based in Barcelona, in Spain, where they developed the objectives of training physicians and caregivers, So, everyone who is involved in care, in medical care, to support and to, of course, facilitate the healing of people in bad health. So this is the partnership, and all together with different kind of profiles, we try to work on the promotion and the building of a common shared memory realized through a museum-based social inclusive system. The keywords that are guiding us through the whole process are the ones that you can see here, highlighted in purple: art, health, and well-being. The idea is based on the cooperation between different kind of higher education institutions, the ones that of course are part of the consortium organizing and managing the project, but also others that we hope we could reach through events like the one we are carrying out today, health and social care institutions, and museums. It is exactly this strategy that we would like to perform over the project in order to make these museum experiences really valuable, in order to facilitate inclusion, accessibility, and especially health and well-being. There are different issues there. They need to use, as you were saying at the very beginning, Antonio, museums at places with no borders, actually, places where the testimony that of human civilization is there, and where every one of us can recognize their own history, creating a new memory all together. This concept is at the basis of our project. So the idea again is to create a new social system where, of course, different new teaching and learning paths, new teaching and learning itineraries are built also with the help of technology, are built with the help of critical use of technology. So our partnership is working exactly on this concept, where every kind of teaching and learning proposal, every kind of involvement proposal can be supported by technology, but the technology should be thought, tested, and addressed to the different aims that we try to pursue over the project. Here you have a series of results that we need to reach by the end of the project. Every one of us, of course, is responsible for one of the results, but the concept here, the idea is to have all the participants taking direct and active action through all the different project results. As you might see, I'm not going to read the whole slide, but as you might see from a very quick reading, the idea is to reflect on the use of technology for inclusive educational activities within the museum context, but the use of blended teaching and learning activities, the use of MOOC, the use of open resources is at the core of our action and of the project in its entire development. So of course our focus is consistent with the topic that we are going to discuss today. There will be different workshops, so whoever is interested, please keep in touch with us. But I think that through Eden, through the association, we will be able to involve many different participants, many different subjects interested in our work. We will be in different places, of course, within the countries involved in the project, but also at Eden's conferences. So we'll have the chance to meet with you all when the different conferences will take place over the project time. Respected as far as the outcomes are concerned, as you can see, again, we'll work as far as technology is concerned, again, in different ways. We will focus on the use of OERs and MOOCs, of course, but we will also work on the technology that could be more useful within the museum framework, within the museum structures, to have more fruitful interactions among the different participants or users, as I like to call those accessing the museum. Of course, we will work on video storytelling and on the realization of a permanent database where video storytelling are stored. And here we have one of the most important experts all over the world as regards storytelling, Antonia. And so she will tell us more. We will also focus on the use of assessment tools in order to measure the impact of the different activities that we are going to develop through the project. I think this is a very, very urgent, very important point, because we need to know where we are going. So we will share also with all of you the tools that we are going to develop. And we will work through a specific methodology, that is the HADI methodology, which is consistent with what I was saying related to the use of a new mode for assessment and impact measurement, because as you can see, it's based on a series of actions, analysis, design, development, implementation, but always related to the evaluation procedures carried out. The other aspect which is important to understand the issue of inclusion and how inclusion is basically developed throughout the project is the ABCD approach, which is an approach that, as you can see from the acronym, is asset-based community development. So it's related to an approach that works on what is already within the community and tries to value it at its most. I won't go deeper here because time, I know, is very limited. So I thank you for your attention. And of course, we are all there available for your questions. I'm really sorry. I've been sorry so much for Brexit for many different reasons. Many friends and colleagues we have been cooperating for many years are there, and Antonia is one of them. And this project was started actually with some UK partners. that could not be part of this group, but we managed in working anyway with them under many other different opportunities, occasions, and I'll be so glad if Antonia and others, actually we have already 2 evaluators from UK, will anyway be part of our action through the various different objectives and activities that we are going to develop. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Antonella. And now I'll give the floor to Covadonga and to Angeles. I suppose we'll start by Angeles for a presentation on 2 other projects. So we had a project that is just starting, and so we had already this understanding of what is the structure of the project and what we'll deliver. And now we'll see 2 examples of ongoing projects that had already produced many outputs and have a focus also on inclusion and accessibility. So Antonella explored this idea of the museums with no borders, the new kind of museums which do not impose a story, do not impose a written memory, but basically are spaces for collaboratively discover a common story. And this is something that is in a sense also explored by these 2 other projects. Angeles and Kova, you have the floor. Antonella, can you stop sharing, please? Okay, thank you.
Well, in our case, I think I'm going to start with our presentation. We are going to share the presentation from UNED side. And the first thing is to say that, well, it is a pleasure to me to be with all of you this afternoon. Antonio, thank you very much for the invitation, and to be with our friends and colleagues to share about this interesting multidisciplinary topic. So let's see if I can share. Can you see now the presentation?
Yes, can you put it on full screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so the topic here we want to talk about is in which areas UNED is working on this field. So it's this idea of opening up art and museums for all. So the first thing, let me introduce our university, because I think it is important to see our scope in this field also of open education and distance education. We are just in the year, on our 50th year of experience of and life. So we are celebrating our 50th year. And this is a very special year for all of us. So we are the only public university in Spain at the national level with online learning, but supported by a network of local centers all around the country and also abroad. And we have always been a distance education university. And as such, we can say that we are a mega university and with more than 200,000 students. And in this way, these undergraduate students have reached this employability ranking and the high top employability ranking in 2020. But we have very special students. I mean, they are adult and part-time students, such as in the other distance education university. And we also have been working not only in degrees and masters and PhD, but since many years ago, we are working in lifelong learning programs. And we opened also our offer in 2008 with the open courseware platform, and then to MOOCs in Open UNED since 2012. So we have been working in open education since then. The other thing we have to stress is that we are a university that are very much focused on those people that have special needs, such as those that with disabilities and those that are in prison. So these are part of the social values of our university, that is to give the opportunity to get to through university studies, higher education studies to everyone. We are members of the most value distance education organizations and online organizations such as the AD2, Eden, ISAD in the Latin America field, and ISD, and we have the AD2 quality label. That's I mean, for saying that we are very much compromised with, as I said, with this objective of giving the opportunity to, also as the number 4 of the Sustainable Development Goals says that we have to give the opportunity to as much people as we can to reach higher levels of education. But coming to this point of being open and inclusive, we had to think about the figures and facts of our university in diversity. And so we have to say that we have regarding the country, I mean, in Spain, we have the 40% of students with disabilities, with functional diversity in Spain. And the 4% of our students, around 9,000 in our university, are people with this functional diversity. Also, when we talk about open resources, 16% of users declare they have functional diversity as well. So these are people that need, a special attention and actions to make them, or to make that all the resources, the didactic resources that are available for them. Well, so our university, and especially the team that Kova leads, is very much focused on universal accessibility and social, inclusion in our field. But I don't want to forget that we are also focused on, as I said before, to those people that are in prison, because also not only talking about higher education, but also talking about the accessibility to art or to museums is something we had to take into consideration when we think about this, the necessities of these people. So this is our team in INADOC. This is a group in the university, although we also belong to different groups of research and innovation, but we gathered together in this INADOC group, also supported by the UNESCO Chair in Distance Education in the university. And we are a multidisciplinary team because we gathered together the expertise and experience in open and distance education on the psychological side and well-being, engagement, and on the technological side, all those things that are related to inclusion, such as technology acceptance, disability, digital humanities, natural language processing, and overall, the quality assurance of all that. So coming to the point of the museums, well, as UNESCO has just very recently appointed after the pandemic, this is even a more important issue because museums have shown over the pandemic the relevance and the goodness they can give to the population, the global population, and as it has been shown during the pandemic. So even now, UNESCO is bringing museums of the world together to reflect on the future. So I think it is a very important issue now to reflect about all those things that we are talking about now. Our group concerning the two projects that have been developed concerning or regarding museums are two projects focused on opening museums, but making them more inclusive through digital resources and digital education. So the first thing, the first idea was making museums open and inclusive. So that means to reinventing museums so that no one is left aside or left out. But that means, well, on the one hand, that we all know that museums are becoming more open, even more after the pandemic, to the world because of the digital possibilities and the digital resources opening all the resources they have. So we can now get access to the best museums in all over the world in a digital way because of all the open resources they have put, but sometimes they are not really open. I mean, sometimes you have to pay for this virtual visit to the museums. But anyway, I mean, as the International Journal of the Inclusive Museums has stressed, they say, well, nowadays, I mean, there is no collectible object and no experience that cannot be digitalized, so it can be offered through digital means of representation. But on the other hand, well, we can open our digitalized resources in the museums, for instance, but that doesn't mean that they are inclusive. So the thing here, the thing that this group has been working on is to make this digital objects and digitally digitalized art resources to be more inclusive and accessible to everyone. The second thing we are focused on, and it is more related to the current project with Antonella, is the role that art has on health and well-being, which is another approach. I mean, that is very much related to the previous one, but that concerns also the whole population. So in this sense, well, we all know, and the psychological research stress very much that the arts keep and promotes resilience and flourishing in psychological growth in people. And this is something that we have a lot of research behind all of that. And on my side, because I'm a psychologist and I work on the side of positive psychology, the appreciation of beauty and excellence is one of the 24 human strengths that contribute to flourishing, to human flourishing, happiness, and well-being. So museums have a lot of to do in this sense, and a very recent article stresses that art museum visitation, really, we have evidence that it increases well-being and reduces ill-being in human beings. Also, well, there is a lot of things going around this issue, and there are recent papers, recent reports as the OECD and the International Council of Museums that said that, well, the museums have to introduce this perspective of well-being because, well, it has to be an objective of the museums too, because it has to be proved to be very beneficial for the human beings. So the first project, MOOCs, was a project on museology and social integration. And it was related to make the cultural heritage of the museum, the Prado Museum, available or accessible to groups with special accessibility needs that were blind, deaf, and inmates. And well, that should be made through museographic discourses. That was a multidisciplinary team, very large one, and technological developments. So we wanted to work on this idea of art for all, and with a multisensorial approach at this technology acceptance model that Kowa is going to talk afterwards. Well, we work a lot during these years in detecting the specific needs of and interests of the target groups to create different applications. Kowa is going to show also what our group developed at the time, and to promote this international network and giving them well, we work on different issues. We did seminars, training sessions. There was an international conference that Antonella was there in this conference too. And it was a very, I think, very interesting project in the end. With you can see here that there was the university, Universidad Complutense, Universidad Autónoma, UNED, working in that with, as I said, a huge diversity of profiles. But our group, together with all these more than 80 researchers in 8 research group, work on some specific things, and that were to create inclusive experiences to share. And I want to just be focused now in one of the things I loved most from the project, that was to create experiences, multisensorial approach for everyone. I mean, not just for people with a special needs, but to see how we could present art under a multisensorial approach. So you could touch, hear, taste, smell. And so everyone could have some experience with the 5 senses. That was MOOCs with the 5 senses and Prado Museum with the 5 senses. And we developed different types of seminars, and each one focused on one of the senses. For instance, there was, if we talked about touching, well, we had explanations of experts about sculptures and paintings in which touch was very much what was very important, but also there in the session there were the possibility of touch things. So there were blind participants, for instance, and we could approach them to what we were talking about by touching. That was the same, for instance, regarding the tasting things. So we talk about well, all the tasted things that are in art, for instance, in paintings, and we had also the experience, the real experience of some meal that were that was on a painting and it was made in to be tasted by the audience. Or music. I mean, there is the hidden music in many paintings, and there was a group that was working on making this hidden music real, and to play the music that was on the paintings, and to make this multisensorial experience, as I said, in this sense with music. And also, why not smell? I mean, to smell all those things that are on painting. So that was an approach to see that we can have an approach, an inclusive approach to art in different ways, that we can feel not only those people that have disabilities, but everyone can feel the art with the 5 senses. We work, of course, with open educational resources that are there available regarding the different topics that were developed in MOOCs. And well, we also were in the social media with them. And I'm going to give the floor to my colleague, Kova. Thank you.
Thank you, Angeles. Kova. Okay, you have the floor, Kova.
Okay, let me check here. Okay, so regarding technology, we in this big group of INADOC, we are also some engineers. So one colleague, Ana Garcia, that is not with us today, unfortunately, she developed a model to show how semantic technologies can link with open linked data coming up from the museum. So we developed a prototype for helping historians to develop stories and gather automatically related objects that can be found in the open linked data world. We also developed some surveys, because in this project we developed some mobile applications that I'm going to show you in a while. So we first developed a survey based on the technology acceptance model in order to predict how these mobile applications could be perceived, of their usefulness, and also of the easy of use. So we developed a very big survey. We had nearly 300 answers, and we were just focused on the use of what we were developing in this context. So about the use of mobile devices. We wanted to know about, the specific use in people with disabilities. So we asked them about, how much they were aware in the common use of tablets or smartphones. And so they all use most of the, at least in Spain, we have the ONCE Foundation that helps a lot all the users with disabilities to, to have their own devices and mobiles, and also very well personalized. So that was not an issue. And we also ask about the implications of, the easy of connectivity, because if you want to do, some itineraries, for example, within the museum, so you need to have some wireless connections, and also some disabilities, depending on your disability, maybe the connection via NFC, for example, technologies is very good for them, you know, to get some augmented reality information, for example, or for navigating. Also, we asked about the attitude towards the inclusion through gamification activities. It was a point that we saw that there were not really a common use of this kind of technologies, and there was a lot of confusion about virtual reality and augmented reality technologies. So yeah, we decided that there were a lot of you know, future work to do on that. So as Angeles mentioned before, we worked on developing some kind of multisensorial training itineraries inside the museum. So we try to, you know, make all kinds of things, you know, all put together and trying to make like a really engaging user experience. That was our objective, our main objective. So we kind of developed some learning activities that could be developed in the museum and also out of the museum and connecting with the social network, for example. So we started with this painting in Museo del Prado, La Anunciación, and we tried to abstract like a starting point from the painting, and so we took up some main characters, tried to relate all the different objects that appear in the painting and relate them with senses. So we start to develop like a narrative elaboration of storytelling of the painting, and thinking also on blind people. So we finally prepared a multimedia script that was inserted in the mobile applications, and finally we add the content, the speak locutions, and also the ambient sounds and the gamification. So yeah, we try to gather all the aspects and be very precise on which gamification, you know, and related to what part of the painting, and where to smell, and where to make the user with the mobile app to stop and then maybe touch something or go to some external location, for example, the botanic garden, and try to find out, you know, some of the flowers, or, you know, the plants that could be inside the painting. No? So here you can see how it looked like. With the mobile devices, you have to, you know, focus on the wireframe that looked like the painting, and suddenly the 3D dimension figure appeared. So we could just you know, try of moved it around and take a look, you know, inside this very, very nice 3D-dimension figure. And we also developed some tactile and also 3D printed resources. So we developed some puzzles and I don't know, some, you know, nested puzzles and things to start to have a good time, you know, and play around with the with the complete idea of the painting. And we also developed some stuffed silhouettes and some Braille reproductions that can be also touched, you know, for the blind people. That was our main work, was devoted to this La Anunciación painting, but we also did other experiments, small experiments. We took one painting from Goya, and we produced a small mobile application, but devoted to users with cognitive disabilities. So we focused on this kind of children type of drawings, and also the easy reading aspect. We developed another prototype for trying to use the beacons. I'm not sure if you are aware of these IoT elements that can, they are wireless elements that can be placed close to the paintings, and they can also give some augmented reality information to the user. And we also end up with another mobile prototype focused on another painting from Goya, and also trying to make this was more an engineering prototype for the framework to make, to kind of help us to develop different kind of specific mobile applications for different paintings. Okay, so this was just more like a framework, for a template for developing other mobile applications. And the other project we wanted to talk about is the Spectrum project. We are this year ending it. It's about making adjustments to the museum environment to help them to be more autism friendly. So we are developing some guidelines for helping all the museums or staff from the museums for achieving this. We focused on the lived experience. We understand that the users with autism go to the museum such as any other people, so they go with their parents, with their relatives, their families, their friends. So we want to involve them all at the various stage of the process, and try to give them some guidelines how to make the setup of the museums more comfortable for these people, and avoid the segregation of these users aside in some places. So we thought about developing a MOOC as part of the project. As Angeles mentioned, at UNED, we've been very fond of open education movement. So we had already joined all the open, the ideas of the MOOCs and also open courseware since the 90s. We also believe on the importance of developing open resources with Creative Commons licensing. So we have this UNED Abierta portal with more than 200 open courses since 2012, and some of them are already in English, not only in Spanish. So we designed this NanoMOOC as a nano learning experience for Spectrum. It can be maybe devoted to museum staff. So we just wanted to give the participants the opportunity to explore and learn key competency on this museum-friendly, autism friendly museums. Our portal is based on the EDX open code. So we have, this idea of a very tiny learning activity with a workload of maybe 10 hours and of course, completely self-paced. In the project, we have been also delivering other products, for example, very nice guidelines and also a specific checklist that was led by Faro company in Belgium. So with the general guidelines, we have also this English partner outside in Pathways that help us to develop these nice guidelines. So we try to map the information on the NOOC and all the chapters of the NOOC, and follow these guidelines and help to the future users of the NOOC to fill in the checklist and see if their museums are friendly or not and what do they have to do. So at UNED, we are very care of quality assurance. So we have this, we had developed all this information about, the main components, and what about the videos and the video pills and the self-assessment activities, and how to include some complementary materials. So here you can see what we just have produced the previous month in February. So we just got to end up with all the video recordings. You can see on the right side our nice setups, you know, the recording rooms. And as we mentioned, both Angeles and I, we have been very active on assessing through these quality labels. So we have, you know, imported all our expertise on the quality assurance of this MOOC. And just to finish our presentation, our role in the projects also it's technological. So in one of the meetings that we have just made in Madrid, we went to a specific museum that it was very challenging for us. It's devoted to science learning, and it has a lot of self-experimentation, and also we could kind of develop some object-based learning and sensorization. Also, there were a lot of information in Braille touchable, and we could also feel. We did a workshop on electricity, so we could also feel the electricity by ourselves, and that was also very frightening, but also exciting. Okay, so those are some of the publications that we have delivered for these projects. So with this, I think I have I can done my presentation. Thanks for your listening.
Thank you, Covadonga, for the presentation. Well, Covadonga and Angeles for your presentation. Well, we have seen the presentation of the introductions to this one new project and ongoing projects, and we have explored this idea of widening access, and participation as well, but mostly access to the museum experience. And so in this sense, opening it for everyone, for all in this sense. We will now start a second part of our webinar today, which will be based on a discussion, a panel discussion between the speakers. And I'll start by Antonia, exploring probably another side of these experiences, which is the participatory culture. So we've seen here a focus on inclusion, a focus on access, on widening access, but we are also witnessing from the part of museums a very important cultural transformation, and I'm talking about the organizational culture of the museums themselves, a transformation in order to open up, but open up in a sense also of involving the new public, the audiences in this sense, the visitors and the still not visitors and the past visitors. So creating a community of users, as Antonella was saying, that actually co-curate the museum's collection. And this sense, so there is this focus on opening, on making it a hybrid and ubiquitous experience, a personalized one as well. And in that sense, that personalization links with involving everyone to participate in the co-construction of not only of identity, but of the museum experience as such. Because we're not talking just of art museums or science museums or science and technology museums or technology museums. We could also talk about sport museums and other different sorts of museums, which now we have. And so from your standpoint, Antonia, with your tremendous experience in digital storytelling and museums, what is your experience on this development of museums, this opening up for participation that museums are following? Antonia?
Thank you very much, Antonio. And actually, thank you to all the beautiful, wonderful colleagues, because each of the presentation was actually touching upon this very specific theme that you just highlighted. And actually, Kova's slide on co-production was somehow condensing the meaning of this opening up the co-creative space. So museum as co-creative space, but also Angeles, when you were talking about this connection between arts and well-being and the appreciation of beauty. So even that, the appreciation of beauty is of course something that has an impact on an individual, but is also something that needs a safe space for sharing those connections somehow. So and Antonella, of course, I'm taking note. I've been taking notes during your presentation because I was trying to find the thread, and actually I found that thread actually in the participation, the participatory element, probably because that is what I'm most interested in with my digital storytelling hat, but also because all these projects we've been learning about today, I think they have a common thread that is around participation, co-creation, and co-production. And something very important, Antonio and Antonella, you both mentioned this, is about creating a shared social memory. And of course, you were mentioning the values of Eden as a collective, but this is, of course, embraced by museum at the very moment, especially in times of crisis. And of course, COVID-19 was a crisis we all were linked to because we all experienced this. And of course, as you said, was an accelerator for this opening up of museums as spaces for co-production. The other thing I was thinking about, the other aspect I was thinking about is actually creating a safe space, because co-production can actually happen only when audiences, users, they actually believe and feel to be in a safe space, because the expression of creativity and personal understanding of our common and shared heritage, of course, requires also an attitude. I think Angeles was talking about attitude as well as an important factor for participation, the attitude of people for listening. So in my experience of using digital storytelling with large museums, especially I've been working with the Smithsonian Center for Learning and Digital Access, was born as a digital unit. In fact, now is a new unit for the technology, the education and technology within the Smithsonian. So they created this large database of museum resources, but since the beginning, they thought of those resources as an opportunity for users, participants, and audiences to create their own collections. And you mentioned the keywords of co-curation. So co-production of knowledge starts from co-creation as well. And when we think about ways in which we can apply digital storytelling to expand this notion, these opportunities for co-creation, collaboration, and co-curation, we actually think of digital storytelling and other participatory techniques as a way of somehow blurring the boundaries between the knowledge consumers, which actually was the way in which we were used to think about museum visitors, probably until before the pandemic, the knowledge implementers and the knowledge producer. So I think that now we are somehow transitioning across these three different categories. And following, of course, the principle of democratizing the access, we are also democratizing the participation to the production of knowledge, the co-production of knowledge, by somehow creating those safe spaces. And for what Angeles was saying, also generating a very positive impact on those audiences. So I think all those aspects are somehow in a big cloud, where I think I've got a bit of technical mind as Kova. I always think of themes as keywords that become bigger or smaller depending on the priorities. And I think that the pandemic taught us that the priority is actually the connection of all these key themes together. And so that we actually navigate in this cloud of those key terms we've been all exploring together and actually learning about from your brilliant presentations. I think all those aspects are really, really connected to each other.
Well, thank you, Antonia. Do you like to comment, Antonella, Kova, Angeles? Kova, you want to comment?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Antonia. Yeah, I'm very much like Antonia. I think it's very important, this idea of the storytelling. I think the people, the way we feel, the way we keep the emotions, the way we really have a nice experience and emotionally engaged, comes also from the sensory aspect and also from the storytelling. For instance, for us, it was very important to give an importance on the narratives, thinking on the users with blind disability. And at that time, you start to think yourself, the way you look at the painting or a piece of art and how you try to connect what aspects of that piece of art can be linked to your emotions or previous experiences. And then we try to develop the narrative, but not in an objective way, not saying, okay, this is a painting, you can see the angel, and you can see the Maria, the Virgin Maria, and there is a plant there. No, we try to make a narrative, exploring the painting, but trying to get the connection with the smelling and maybe previous experiences in the users. That was our starting point, to trying to develop a nice itinerary that were conducted through the mobile application.
Well, thank you, Kova. Antonella.
Also, yes.
Yeah.
Really, thank you, Antonio. What Antonia mentioned and highlighted as regards the different kind of activities that many museums can carry out related to storytelling, and especially to digital storytelling. And in particular, the Smithsonian, Antonia had an incredible experience working together, and actually she is actually, I think, working still with the Smithsonian, is really consistent with what we would like to do as regards the possibility to use critically any kind of technology, because technology, especially in the work that is represented by digital storytelling at the Smithsonian organization, is directly related to the possibility and the potentiality, I would say, that the digital field has in view of empowering the museums to facilitate accessibility, inclusion, participation, actually. Because what we also try to develop within the European project is the idea of meaning well-being as participation. So well-being is a wide concept, and we try to interpret it in the widest way possible. So not only, of course, it's related to health, it's related to accessibility, it's related to the possibility to help those with disabilities, but is related to any kind of marginalization, any kind of displacement, any kind of seclusion from the active life of society. So what is linked to the activity that Antonia was mentioning, and this possibility of really being involved and of having this support performed by technology in participation, in involvement, is absolutely vital and pivotal in our action. What we would like to do, and I hope that all the people listening to what we are saying today will keep in touch and participate in our activities is the possibility to develop also measurement tools to understand really what kind of impact can have our action through you know, the different ways of using technology to have inclusion really realized.
Well, thank you, Antonella. I would now ask Angelis to comment as well, but I will add something else as well to the question, which is this element of how the museum experience as a learning experience. Well, museum experience has become a learning experience, but more than a learning experience and a discovery experience, it also become part of your own identity construction in a sense. And we have now, it's becoming common, the use of crowdsourcing and crowdfunding. Well, a number of processes that involve the community in building the connection, in curating the collections, and in also co-constructing the meaning of the collections as well. So in that sense, and this starts from early age. We see now children having access by digital resources or devices to the possibility of writing their own museum guide and things like that. So there is a sense of co-ownership. So the museum is now also something that I am owner as well. I'm part of it, and the message of the museum is also something that it relates to me because I was part of that story and part of the writing of that story. Angelis, how is open education actually contributing to this?
Well, I think that open education is a huge advance in humanity in some sense, because what it gets is this this goal, no? Or for instance, that we are well, trying to come with now, that education should be open for everyone, because that's the main thing we can do for a human being, is to get them all the tools that he or she can have to develop of their own self. So open education is in institutions such as mine, of course, is working on trying to get as much people as possible involved in education, in continuous education all along their lives. So that's not only related to be a graduate or to be a PhD or to be, you know, a master in something, but we need to be in contact with our people or with ourselves. And this is this idea of Dylan that we should be, as universities, for instance, partners all along the lives of people. So we need to give them the opportunity to continue learning in those things that are in a personalized way they need more. And part of that should be those that are related to art, to the museum experience, to these that open us to culture, because this is, as you say, this is something that is well, that we need to feel that is part of ourselves. So as Antonia says also, I think it's I mean, we need to think also from a psychological perspective that if we open museums and we open education to understand and to work and to learn about the culture and about the evolution of culture, we are going to learn about ourselves. This is something very important, and something I mentioned before, that research, what it and it means, or what it says, is that makes people flourishing. So that's something very important, at least to psychologists. I mean, is to people grow up, to people feel that they can have a wider perspective in their lives. And it's not just flourishing, but I also think that this is very important, related to healing, to the power of healing that art has. And not only under an individual perspective, but as Antonia says, as a collective perspective. now that we are under fear experience and under uncertainty in this world, this appreciation of beauty of what the human being can develop, not just war, but on this side, what human being has developed along the history in terms of beauty and in terms of making ourselves better. This is something we have to open to the knowledge of what we have developed along the history. So yeah, I think open education contributes to that, and it should be part of the museums too. So I would ask you, because I'm not an expert in museums. So in our past meeting, Antonella, remember when we were in the Thyssen Museum? We were in the education area.
Very well. Yeah.
That there was this discussion you mentioned about that. There is a discussion about what a museum should be, or what is the definition of museum. And nowadays, so that's a thing that made me think a lot, because there was not I mean, a unique concept, or even nowadays with all these things we are talking about.
No, there's not actually, and there's a big discussion there. In fact, the ICOM, the International Council of Museums, as we were saying when we met in Madrid, has been talking about the definition of museum over, I would say almost a decade, in the sense that already in 2016, they really focused on the need to revise the original definition of museum that was developed by ICOM, and that mainly expresses the functions of museums as yes, those that are related to the preservation, the research, also of course, the restoration of the objects, and also, of course, the educational side related to the use of museums and the enjoyment part related to the participation in museums activity. But of course, there's a huge part that is that of the social value of museums that is not so clearly stated in that definition. And since the main general conference in Milan that took place in 2016, ICOM decided to start a new committee devoted to the revision of that definition, which is particularly important because that definition is the main reference that we all over the world involved or interested in what is museum work, because we can say just museum educational activities, or we can say just public engagement activities, or we can say just those involved in preservation or conservation and so on and so forth. The social value of museums regard all of us. And of course, if we think of our role as educators, of course, we in my view, must be interested in what a museum could do. Museums are actually should be extended spaces of what is the educational of any educational activity. As we were saying, they show the whole humanity development through the ages. So our identity is there. So it's very important, and you know, it should be our main interest to know more about museums and to know more about how they develop their activities. So the issue of the definition is a major one, and it is still under discussion. And I think that in this new main conference, because as I said, they started with a new committee devoted to the new definition in 2016. In 2019, when we had the other main conference, general conference in Kyoto, the discussion was really hard, and they couldn't reach an agreement. And so on this next conference that will take place in Prague, hopefully this August, let's really wish that that could be an event where everyone can participate from all over the world. On that occasion in Prague this August, we really hope that a new shared definition of museum can be there, and could include also the importance of the social value of museums.
Thank you, Antonella.
Yeah, I would say there that is thinking in education on the broadest perspective.
Yeah.
So not knowledge, but also it's in the transforming power as educating a human being. But I mean, as the broadest perspective, because if we only focused on knowledge, we wouldn't be on the right point, I think. So
absolutely, absolutely. Also because, as I always say to my students in particular, it's important to start museum activities working with this idea of establishing a relation with the object at the museum, without being aware of, you know, there's no need of being so much aware of the historical artistic historical contents related to that specific object. But after this first encounter, even the most native users get also that effect of wanting and desiring to know more about the historical and artistic issues related to that object. So the cultural impact is naturally there. And that's very, very important, because we really need to develop many different cross-sectional skills. And actually, together with Antonia, we developed a project, a European project related to the power of museums in developing cross-sectional skills in primary school children, but the whole society benefit from this kind of development.
Well, Antonella and Angelis, thank you for this shared discussion, because this is also part of this participatory culture that we're promoting. We're approaching the end. I've just asked several times to our participants to share questions or ask questions if they wanted, but apparently they were not. So I'll
Sorry, Antonio, they are too shy today, so.
Well,
we need some ice-breaking.
Well, we'll have have to organize another webinar for that. Anyway, I'll probably challenge Antonia for a last question, and then we'll wrap up. Antonia, we have been discussing until this exchange between Antonella and Ángeles mentioned exactly that, the transformational value of the museum learning experience. But we haven't tackled still, and I will challenge you for that in just a few minutes, on how open education is also having a transformational impact on the museum educators and on the museum curators as well. MOOCs, for instance, MOOCs and open educational resources, as Ángeles has also mentioned, are now being used for staff training in museums, for curators training, for educators training as well, and digital storytelling as well. So, from your own experience, what can you share with us about this? How is also museum educators and museum curators transforming in terms of their profession because of this opening up in the educational process, their educational process? Antonia?
Thanks for the question, Antonio, which actually is very crucial, and it's linked to what we were saying earlier about impact as well, because I think that this is one of the fastest impact that we can probably witness within museums. It is actually how the availability of this large number of educational resources is making educators and curators aware of these tools, and then they are not only using those tools and resources, but they're also reapplying those approaches in their own practice. So as an example, if you go into the homepage of the Smithsonian Learning Lab, you will see that they have added a new part, a new section, scrolling down in the homepage, about how they deliver e-learning now. So it's not just about using accessible resources, but it's also making sure that in the meantime, educators are changing their practice and they are delivering in a different way training opportunities for different types of audience and for other educators. And as you were saying earlier, they are also bridging formal and non-formal education even more, because of course, those resources are somehow crafted by higher education institutions. They are used within non-formal education institutions, and they recreate different types of open educational resources to deliver their own training to teachers in colleges and other institutions. So it's a very nice loop. It's a very positive story that, as you said, the COVID pandemic probably accelerated quite. It's quite tangible and visible as an outcome of the pandemic.
Okay, thank you very much, Antonia. And I cannot close without actually giving the floor to our participants. We do have one question by our friend and Eden's fellow Alfredo Soeiro, who actually asked, how can we build an online museum community? Any suggestions? Who would like to answer this? Antonella, Kova? Kova, you have the floor.
Okay. From the technological point of view, it's quite easy. So we can
yes,
get help with the social networks, and you know, I think the point is the humanistic input, you know, and you know how we can not only connect but also transmit, you know, to the rest of us how we feel, and when we you know, go to the museum and we see all these magnificent pieces of art, and how, you know, how those pieces of art transform our way of being, you know, and how we enhanced, as Ángeles mentioned before, you know, how we get happier, how we get, you know, improved because we have learned something, and how we are transformed. So the technological side is quite easy, but I think we have a lot to work on the human being side. So
yeah, you're right, Kova. There's I mean, as also Antonia mentioned, over the lockdown, over the pandemic, certain aspects have been, underlined and accelerated. So many institutions, many museum institutions tried hard over that time to support the community creation, or online, of course. Many different museums. I'm thinking of, for instance, of the Getty Museum, or that prompted different activities, asking participants and the users to tell about their own experience of certain objects. I'm thinking of the National Gallery in Washington, who developed different programs to support online experiences with especially centered on visual thinking strategies to develop cross-sectional skills like critical thinking and so on. So there are strategies put in place to support this kind of community creation thanks to technology. In my view, when you work online, and all of us here are, there are many different important experts here. The most important thing is to support these kind of activities with a frequent use of that strategy, or anyway a follow-up activity related to the strategy that you put in place in order to support community participation. Then, as Covadonga said, there are many technological opportunities that can be used, can be put in place, and that can be effective. And there are also many colleagues from different areas that are studying the issue of digital humanities. That is a huge area at the moment all over different universities. So there's lots of work. In my view, another point is to develop and create groups where experts from the university side, both in technology and of course in the different disciplines that are involved, other colleagues from the museum side, other from stakeholders from the productive part of society, and the local policy decision makers should be part on. So really, community of practice should be developed in order to support the definition, the creation, and the sustainability of certain communities, and of communities that could be helpful for the whole society.
Thank you very much, Antonella. Angeles, and then Antonia for a final word.
Yeah, well, very briefly, I think it's quite interesting. As Kova said, there is no problem with the technology side, but as in the in the educational field, we need the competences. So we also have to think that we should be aware that we can create another digital divide in art experience and museums, because we need to get people involved and to have the required competences for making use and participating in online museums. And so it's not just digitalization of art, but we are moving towards digital art, which is something new also. And people should know how to start working in creating digital art. So yeah, that's for the education side.
Thank you, Angeles. And we're not talking just about art museums, but art museums as well. Antonia, you have the floor.
Just very briefly, if there is just one thing that I learned from digital storytelling as a practice, is actually I enhanced my attitude to listening. And I think that's a key aspect that we should consider when we think about how to create a community. So community is about collaboration and intrinsic to collaboration. I think we should all work more on this human attitude of listening to make those collaborations more effective.
Well, thank you very much, Antonia. Let me just, well, thank you. And I think we're all joining the same feeling of happiness and well-being in this session, because this was a fruitful and a great discussion. I think we tackled very important aspects, and this is also inspirational, as some of our participants have written in the chat board as well. Thank you very much, Antonella, Covadonga, Angeles, and Antonia. Well, I think a big hand for you, and a big hand also for the participants and for all the ones who have shared with us this discussion and shared with us as well their thoughts, reflections, and comments. It was a great pleasure for me. Let me just, on behalf of everyone in the panel and on Eden, to wish you a very good weekend. Well, a more peaceful future for Europe, and above all, that the values that Eden stands for and that Open Educator stands for will, of course, endure. So thank you very much. Have a nice weekend, and thank you for having been with us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, really. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye. Thank you a lot.